Welcome to Drive Culture. I'm Jonathan Rivers, and today we have the 2013 Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution X. And I'm going to tell you why super modded out cars like this are still all the rage. So we'll go over the exterior, the interior, the powertrain, and of course, take it for a drive. So if this is content you're after, or you're new to the channel, please be sure to click that bell to subscribe to come back for more. And with that, let's get after it. So today we have a very special car on the channel. Now, I'm going to talk about the brand Mitsubishi here for a second, because even myself, as a current Honda and Acura fanboy, I myself had also fallen in love with Mitsubishi back in the day, to the point where when I actually lived in Japan in the early 2000s, I went out and bought my own Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution 4. Yeah, that's right, the right-hand drive older Evo that they never sold here in the US. And I absolutely love that car. And much like this one here, I actually modded it as well. So for me, this still holds a special place in my heart, and it's really cool to come full circle back to this last generation of the Evos. And in fact, this 10th generation of the Lancer Evo finished production back in 2015. Now, it launched in the US back in 2008, so it has been several years since this car went on sale and since it's actually left the US marketplace, which now makes these cars not only valuable, but still quite desirable. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go over all the details. Now, admittedly, I can't do that. So what we're gonna do is have the owner of this car, who, if you didn't already guess, is actually the videographer for us here on Drive Culture. He's gonna come on and tell us all about this amazing vehicle. So come on in. This is Kyle. You haven't seen him on camera, first time here, so what's up, man?
Nope, good to finally be on the other side of the camera for a change.
Well, we're still gonna have you work here. We're gonna have you take some, some video here for us, but clearly this is your baby. This is your long-term project. So why don't you just at least tell us like the background story behind it?
Yeah, no, so good to be on the other side of the camera for a little bit. Evos for me, I think started back around when Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift came out. I know a lot of stuff we tie to Fast and Furious series, but for me, seeing the Evo 8 in Tokyo Drift made me really fall in love with Evos.
Yeah.
And to be honest, when Mitsubishi came out with the 10, I wasn't a fan of it. I got used to the body styles of the 8s and the 9s, and I was like, I want one of those. I saw when they did the FMC for the 10, and I was like, doesn't quite do it for me.
No, but that's funny, right? Because I feel like everybody has that, generation of Evos that they like. And of course, there's the Subaru guys out there as well. But let us know your guys' thoughts and comments down below. Were you like, the 1 through 5 generation? Were you that 7, 8, 9 generation? Or did you finish out here in the 10? So
yeah, so after seeing the car and kind of just looking at it, I was like, okay, it started growing on me, and the front was what really got me. The light, or the rear with the tail light design, they just seemed a little high, so it just didn't seem as balanced. But obviously, the car grew on me. I bought one.
And when did you actually buy this car?
So I bought this in February of 2013. So I bought it brand new, original
owner.
Yep, original owner. Didn't modify it for like the first few years because I was in college working part-time and had my dream car, but I was like, okay, I'm not going to strap myself too much to try and go out and modify it the way I did.
Well, I mean, that's what's cool too. Like if you actually buy a car, live with it for a little bit in its stock form, then I think that's where you actually realize what you should modify. Some people, like the day they get it, they're off to the shop putting new wheels and suspension and stuff on it, and that's fine. But for me, I like that you spend some time getting to know the car to kind of ultimately figure out like what you wanted to change. So with that, what did you change? I mean, it looks like everything on the car, right?
Yeah, so there's stuff from bodywork to suspension, wheel sizes, upgrade, obviously different wheels than the stock wheels. And we can go through the whole list as we go through this walk around, but yeah, there's a plethora of stuff that's been changed. And that's honestly probably pretty light for an Evo.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because even today, the Evo fanboys, the clubs are still out there. There's still a huge following, right? And like, you still look out there and there's people that to this day are buying new kits, buying new performance parts, you know, cars with several hundred horsepower, things like that. But why don't we go ahead and do a complete deep dive into your car?
Yeah, sounds good. Let's
All
do
right,
it.
let's get after it. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the exterior of this Evo 10. Now, first, let's talk about the color, which we frequently do here. So this was the black that Mitsubishi offered at the time. Although, and again, it's not just my sunglasses here, it doesn't really look black, right? It has a lot of pearlescence in the paint. So it was actually called Phantom Black Pearl, right? And it's pretty crazy, the color shift. I mean, the way the sun is hitting it right now, it's almost got like a gold, almost a purple, like mixed in there. So I won't call it black, but it does look good. So I'll give you that. But looking down at the front of this car, I mean, like Kyle was telling us earlier, that was probably, you know, his, you know, favorite view of the Evo 10, and I would definitely agree with that. But clearly what we got here is an entirely different front fascia than what came with the car. So we still got Kyle talking to us. So Kyle, what's going on with this whole lower front fascia here?
Yeah, so what we're looking at is the Varis V3 front bumper. It was actually a part of that whole V3 body kit that they launched, I believe, back in 2017.
Okay.
They did a whole project with Bulletproof Automotive, and there's a whole wide body, and I saw the front fascia and I was like, I gotta have it. I was actually at SEMA that year, so I saw that car in person. Literally came back from the show and went to Bulletproof and ordered one.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, it looks awesome, right? It's you know, it still kind of retains somewhat of the original shape of the Evo front fascia, but clearly it's a lot more aggressive. There's a lot more openings. It has, you know, quite a bit of an extra lip here. Now, is this you know, does this mean when you're pulling in and out of places, you got to be pretty careful with this front lip?
oh, 100%. I want to say it's lower than a lot of supercars in a
Yeah.
way,
Yeah.
because a lot of supercars have like a lower front overhang. But yeah, I definitely scraped that lip up. It's actually been repainted.
Okay. Well, I'm going to try to be careful when I take your car for a drive here, but it gives me an idea of, like you said, just how low this car is here. So the front fascia looks really good. Are these headlights stock? I mean, everything looks the same, basically?
No, so I also swapped out the headlights. That's actually my second pair of headlights.
Okay.
They became really popular when Audi started doing that whole surround DRL on their cars. So the DRL on this headlight is supposed to resemble what the Audis have.
Okay.
And then the blinker that's on that middle portion towards the inside is actually sequential. So it'll actually scroll out when
Swirl
the
out.
blinker's on. And then you have the projector housing.
See,
For
I
the
think
main
that's
headlight
what's
beam.
really cool, man, because a lot of people, to your point, they'll, you know, keep a car for a long time, but to kind of like make it look fresh and new, they'll change things like the headlights and taillights with like more modern lighting technology like LED and sequential and things like that. So I think that's a very, very nice mod. I mean, if you wouldn't have told me that, I would think that otherwise it looks pretty stock. But clearly, this is not stock here. I mean, what's going on with the hood? I mean, tell us about this.
So that's a Sabon carbon hood. Actually, the car was involved in a bit of an accident back in
Okay.
2018. We'll put a picture of it up on the screen what the car actually looked like. But
Okay.
as part of the insurance, we were able to get that hood because it was actually cheaper to get that than the factory aluminum hood that came from Mitsubishi unpainted.
Well, I mean, it's pretty sweet, right? It's carbon fiber. Looks like it's a pretty like nice weave, you know, looks like it's high quality. Like you said, there's lots of venting all over the place, right? Where, like you said, traditionally they had the center vent. Is that right on the regular car?
The regular hood had the center vent, so that cools the turbo, which is on the back side of the engine. And then there were two vents up towards the front that kind of just let the heat extract out from under the hood.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, and it definitely makes this car look a lot more aggressive. So with that, let's go ahead and start to make our way to the side of the car, where I'm guessing there's going to be a lot of modification here as well. So, you know, first and foremost, let's get to the wheel and tire package. So one of the things that, you know, I always appreciated about Mitsubishi was actually from the Evo 5 forward is when they introduced the Brembo brake kits on their car. I mean, it was always a very, very prominent thing. They actually had Brembos on the front and the rear, so I really appreciate that Mitsubishi added that level of performance to this car. But again, with your car, it looks like there's obviously some modifications there. But let me just take a step back from the brakes. How about the wheels, right? What are we working with here?
So the wheels are Gramlight 57 CRs. I actually got them around the time that Gramlight introduced them.
Right.
And they're in a gun blue 2 color, which when they're clean looks really nice, but because of the Brembos, you get a lot of brake dust and they can easily start turning brown.
It's the bane of our existence, right? Guys with performance cars, there's nothing worse than brake dust all over the place. But I mean, the wheel actually, you know, stamped in it says made in Japan, right? So you're getting these parts shipped from Japan for your car, right?
Yep. So the front bumper, the wheels, some of the other pieces that we'll get to were actually shipped from Japan.
See, I love that, man, because people say JDM all day, this and that, but it's not until you're actually buying the parts in Japan, shipping them here, and putting them on your car that you're really Japan domestic market. So that's pretty sweet. So what about the tires? You obviously got some, what is Michelin Pilots, right?
Yep, Pilot 4S's, as we've known on some of the other cars on our channel, like Civic Type R, your Integra Type S.
Yep.
Probably the best tires on the market right now.
But I mean, width and like, you know, so these are 18-inch wheels, right?
Correct.
That's the original size that came with the Evo?
Original diameter, but these particular wheels are actually an inch wider. So I went 18 by 9.5. Didn't want to go too crazy. I know a lot of 10 owners will do like 18 by 10.5 and having to roll fenders. And
yeah.
Didn't want to do all that, but.
That's pretty sweet. And then tire size, like that's original spec. It was like, these are 255, 35 ZR18s. I mean, is that the original spec or you got different tires?
So the tires are about 10 millimeters wider. The original width was 245. So with the wider wheel, went a little wider tire. So.
Makes sense, makes sense. And then now that we're back to the brakes, I still see you got the 4-piston, the red Brembo calipers up front. But tell us what's going on with the disc, because that doesn't look, you know, that is not stock, right?
Yeah, so when I needed brake replacement, I think I was at that point where I was doing more canyon runs, wanted some slightly better brake performance. So I was able to get a Stoptech slotted rotor set along with braided stainless steel brake lines.
Okay.
So definitely not stock, but not super over the top big brake kit or anything like that.
No, but hey, again, extra performance is there. It's going to make the car stop better. So as we continue our way to the side of the vehicle, I mean, it's kind of cool. You got these super small carbon fiber side mirrors. So what made you go with something like that?
Just for the simpler look. I think when I looked at the Evos from the front, the mirrors just looked really big.
Now, does this compromise your view though? I mean, it's pretty small, right?
So they're actually both convex mirrors. So as long as they're adjusted in the right angle, I feel like I can see more with those.
All right, we're gonna test that out here. When I go for a drive, we'll see if I can actually see as I'm backing up or, you know, people are coming up on my side. But, you know, from the side, this was always standard, right, on the Evos, this kind of, you know, is this actually functional? Looks like it's maybe decoration?
No, there is some holes in this that they punched out, so it's a slightly functional air curtain vent on the side.
Okay, and then this side sill here, that definitely looks aftermarket, right? Another addition?
Yeah, so that side sill is actually from that Varis V3 kit. So again, I don't have the wide body, so there's actually another fin that would come up and meet the wide fender. But I just like the design, and the funny thing is that little carbon part element in the front.
This guy here, right?
Yeah, it literally becomes a rock tray.
There's literally little rocks in there right now. I mean,
yeah, because there's an opening in the front so the air can flow from behind the wheel, but then whatever the wheel kicks up, unfortunately gets stuck there. So every time I wash the car, it just rocks everywhere.
Essentially collects that right there. Okay, it's pretty cool, pretty cool. So how about this? I mean, you're getting hopefully the whole car in the shot. I'll get out for a sec so people can see it, because I mean, this thing is pretty menacing, right? I mean, we'll obviously get to the wing and the stuff in the rear, but the stance on your car is spot on, man. It looks really, really good. So I also like the fact that you got like these kind of aftermarket, you know, rain visors here. That's pretty sweet. As we make our way to the rear, is it a square setup for the wheels and tires?
Yeah, square setup.
Okay, so same width all around. You had the 4-piston Brembos up front. These are 2 pistons in the back or a single?
Correct. 2 pistons.
2 pistons, got it. So still have those slotted rotors in the rear. But as I look, I mean, obviously the car is lower down, Kyle. So like, What kind of suspension setup do you have on this thing?
Yeah, so I'm actually sitting on Tein Monosport coilovers.
Okay.
I had a contact over at Evasive Motorsports that kind of talked me through it, and because you had KWs on the high end, then you had Tein's like entry-level coilover systems, but I wanted something with a little more adjustability.
So that's all four corners are adjustable?
All four corners, 16-way adjustability from super soft to super stiff. It's also got the pillow ball mount on the front damper, so I can help adjust camber.
Okay.
So once I got the coilovers installed, took it to an actual shop to have it corner balanced and aligned properly. More setup how we would do just for canyon runs, maybe some light duty track, nothing super crazy.
Well, I can't wait to see how this thing rides. So thanks for letting us know about that. Let's make our way to the rear, which obviously there's probably just as many changes, if not more, than what we saw up front. So you can't ignore it. So first and foremost, let's go with the wing here, right? It says Voltex Racing Japan. So tell us about this crazy spoiler you have on the back.
So yeah, I mean, it's my coffee table when I go to Cars and Coffee. But I
that.
grew up watching a lot of IndyCar racing, eventually got into GT racing. I was always a fan of when you could see an IndyCar, F1 car going by a concrete wall and you just see this big wing just like floating over the wall. So I was like,
Yeah.
Evos were known for having their big wings. I was like, I wanted a little bigger. Plus, the stock Evo wing sat like perfectly in the middle of the window where it's like it blocked your rear view.
Yeah, for visibility, right?
Yeah.
So this one doesn't block?
Nope, it sits high enough where you're looking straight through it. So there's some function, I'm probably not ever driving to use the full aerodynamic functions of it, but it actually did clear up visibility out of the rear.
I mean, this has got to be one of the biggest. And, you know, I mean, the fact that it's in carbon fiber, it's like this like two-stage design. You know, you got these kind of aluminum, you know, braces here on the side. So pretty intense spoilers. So let's make our way to the rear. So you've clearly like debadged the car, right? So there's not even a Mitsubishi logo back here. So I'm sure people come up behind you and they're like, what car is that? So pretty cool there that you got rid of the badges. It does make it look super clean. You got the now the vortex generators that are on the top there. Was that standard with the car?
No, not for the 10. That was just a piece I found online. I saw it on previous generations of Evos. I kind of liked how it looked. It's supposed to channel air to the rear wing, but because I don't have my stock wing on there anymore, I'm not sure how functional it still is, but I just like the aesthetic of it.
Well, the aesthetic is cool. You know, I like the old school antenna. I always joke about that. And for those that know, you know, yes, I can speak and read Japanese. So I'm gonna call out that it says Speed Hunters, right? Speed Hunters. So I don't even know what that's for. Is there a meaning behind that? Or?
It was a magazine or shop, and I think they still have like an Instagram presence. I actually tried to rebuy that because that decal's getting a little old, but
it looks cool though, and I had to call out the Japanese. So next, let's go ahead and look. I mean, obviously the rear diffuser on this car, this whole rear fascia is completely different, right? So is this again part of that Varis body kit?
Yeah, so that's the Varis rear bumper. I think they've used it on multiple kits. There's actually even another diffuser piece that you could buy that would bolt up to it to give you, like it would close off the exhaust holes and give you just better smooth airflow from underneath the car.
Yeah, I mean, it's super aggressive, right? I mean, again, I like that at least on the upper portion, you know, retain the original paint color. And then obviously as you get down below, it's like more gloss black. And there's just a lot of aerodynamics going on there. And I think lastly, we can kind of point over that huge cannon of exhaust. Now, technically that falls under the performance, but since it's there, I mean, what kind of exhaust system do you have on this car?
So there's a Tomei titanium test pipe, along with a Tomei titanium catback exhaust with a 4-inch tip. So I always liked that burned titanium look.
I was gonna say.
So when I was looking for an exhaust system, I was like, okay, I gotta have that burned titanium look. And then because the whole thing is titanium, if you get up underneath the car, everything starts turning purple just from the heat, and it just looks really cool.
Hey, nothing wrong with the cool looking exhaust. Wait till you guys hear this exhaust. That's a whole different story. So with that, Kyle, if you're good, I think we've covered everything on the exterior. So next, let's go ahead and hop inside to talk about the interior. All right, guys, here we are inside this Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution 10. And just like the outside, there's definitely some modifications in here, but not quite as extensive. So first, let's just talk about the original design of this Mitsubishi Evo. So, one of the things that I liked about this car and even some of the previous generations is that Mitsubishi put a super small diameter steering wheel in their cars. I mean, this literally feels like a video game or like a go-kart. It's so small. It's definitely going to make it for a lot of fun to toss around while we're driving, so can't wait to try that out. I mean, back in the day, they still had things like, your cruise control on the right, your audio and entertainment controls on the left, even some controls for your Bluetooth connectivity in the phone. In the interior, they also had this like kind of gloss black finish. So even 10, 12 years ago, that was a thing in the industry. People are, other OEMs are still putting that in their interiors today. Pretty simple controls on the door, to adjust your mirrors, your windows, things like that. Now, clearly on this car with those little tiny side mirrors, you're not going to adjust them that way, but that's still cool that you can just reach out and grab them really easily. With this car being the Evolution 10 GSR trim, it came with a 5-speed manual transmission. So got my 3 pedals in front of me. That's pretty sweet. Had a pretty basic audio system here. It was a CD player, right? Dating itself a little bit back then. But that's what they offered at the time. Standard HVAC controls here, pretty adjustable, pretty easy to use. And again, with this being kind of an older car and a manual, it doesn't have an electronic parking brake. So it has a good old, original side brake here that you're going to pull. So pretty cool kind of retro feature there. Outside of that, though, these are the original Recaro bucket seats that came with the Evo 10, and they're in like a kind of a cloth material, feel really nice. They did offer a MR package Evo that not only had a smaller spoiler, but it was kind of the more premium trim. So that one had kind of like a combo leatherette, Recaro seat design to it. So, but I like the way these feel. There's obviously some extra upgrades in here though. So that's where I'm going to ask Kyle, who's still on camera with me here, to tell me about some of the extra little changes and modifications we got going on. So first and foremost, Kyle, although these are the original Recaro seats, there's clearly these kind of 5-point seat belts going on here. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so at one point prior to when I got in my accident, I was actually hoping to take the car to the track. I was doing a lot of canyon runs with friends, and after having the upgraded suspension, upgraded wheels, and the corner balance and alignment, and the car was so grippy. I remember being up in the canyons and I took a corner and the car literally almost felt like it threw me into the passenger seat. So I was like, okay, let's get some better restraints for when I do eventually, hopefully go to the track. So yeah, that's why there's the 4-point Schroth harnesses along with the NRG harness bar behind you.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, they're clearly mounted to something. So when we hop in the rear, we'll show you what that huge bar is and where these are actually attached to. But I mean, that's pretty sweet. Definitely feels like a race car. I mean, right next to me here, though, by the steering wheel, though, I got this little computer. Now, I know what it means. It says Cobb, but why don't you tell all the viewers what this means and what kind of modification this is?
Yeah, so I'm running a Cobb access port with a stage 1, as Cobb calls it, off-the-shelf map.
Okay.
So it's calibrated for the intake that's under the hood that we'll get to when we talk about the powertrain. But essentially, the tune that I'm running up the boost pressure from, I think, around 15 PSI to about 23.
Oh, wow.
So it's a noticeable difference, but not anything super crazy
Okay.
for the mods that are on the car.
No, I mean that's definitely cool. It's here right within an easy touch to probably touch and adjust if you need to. Obviously, as I talked about the manual earlier, but this is something different too, right? The shift knob, and it's kind of a longer, like elongated, like shift knob. Any reason why you went with this style here?
Yeah, so I have the original shift knob
Okay.
that was branded Lancer Evolution, similar to the handbrake next to you.
Yep.
That was actually the only option that was on the car when I got it. I didn't want anything extra than outside of that. But just because of the seating position of the seats, as much as I love the Recaros, it felt like I was sitting a little high when I would reach for the shifter.
Okay.
It felt like I was reaching down for the
Down
shifter,
here.
so I wanted a shift knob that would kind of bring it up where if I grab it, it's like in a more natural position.
I believe
Um,
that, and I feel that too. So, to your point, it does feel like I'm kind of raised up a little bit. So these seats don't go any lower than this, right?
no.
So, okay, I totally get buy into that. But yeah, I mean, outside of that, it has a very analog kind of traditional gauge cluster. It actually shows up to 180 mph, almost a 9,000 red line, but really it's probably cutting off at about 7. So again, it's nice though to see kind of analog gauges because in this day, everything's basically digital. So Kyle, is there anything else that you can call out up here?
The only other addition is I've added in a dash cam. So it's
Okay.
actually wired into I've ran the wire along the roof lining down the A pillar, and there's actually a USB port in the glove box. So
Oh,
it's
wow.
actually wired into the glove box. So most of the wire is hidden except for maybe that
This
five,
one
six
wire.
inches.
Okay.
But it's just good to have, especially after the incident.
Yeah, I can imagine right after you get into an accident, you're like, all right, next time it's time to install a dash cam. So, I
Yep.
mean, that's pretty sweet. And like most of the cars we review here on the channel don't have something like that. So, definitely pretty cool. So, if that's everything up front, why don't we just go ahead and peek in the rear?
Sounds good.
All right, guys, here we are in the rear of that Mitsubishi Evo 10. Now, let's just get right after it. I mean, you can see these 4-point harnesses and what they're attached to here. So, Kyle, tell us about this bar. Tell us like how it's mounted, where it's mounted to, and honestly, I mean, are we actually supposed to, you're actually supposed to have people back here with this setup, or?
So for safety reasons, technically not supposed to carry any passengers in the back. The reason I went with the harness bar, because as you can see, the harnesses are wrapped to the bar. So the other option would be to use the anchor points that are in the seat, meaning they would shoot straight diagonally back through the harness holes in the seat. But then that would really deem the back seats unusable, even for if I want to throw stuff back there.
Oh, okay.
So I went with the harness bar. In the case of an extreme emergency and I need to carry somebody, I can technically still do it. But obviously for safety reasons, I try and minimize that. But yeah, the harness bar is actually mounted up to the B pillars where the factory seat belts mount.
Okay.
And then at the bottom of the B pillar, sorry, there's another mounting point, and that's actually where the seat belts mount, along with on the other side where the actual factory buckle is.
Mm.
The seat belts mount there as well. And then obviously they're wrapped to the bar. So that's your 4 anchor points.
It's a pretty intense setup, and obviously, once I get a chance to take this thing for a drive, I'll really get to see the benefit of that 4-point harness setup here. But definitely some impressive work. I mean, you didn't go full cage, but at least having this shows your intention. So, I mean, outside of that in the back, it was pretty, pretty simple back here. There's really not a whole lot. I mean, there's basic, window controls, things like that. There's a couple speakers back here. You still get the same material, this kind of cloth material. It is rather premium though, given the age of the car and the price point. And you did have this kind of fold down armrest, which if you did have people back here, they would at least have access to that. But I mean, I feel like it probably could be a straight up real 5-passenger vehicle. And, if you needed to, you could definitely fit 2, maybe 3 adults back here if needed. So if there's nothing else to cover back here in the second row, next, let's go ahead and talk about the cargo. All right, next, let's go ahead and talk about the cargo of this Evo 10. Now, there's obviously a couple ways to open it up. You could pull this little lever on the inside, but even on this key fob, and yes, it's an actual key, right, dating itself a little bit, there was a trunk release button. You actually had to push it twice to get it to open. So you'd push it twice, you hear a little click, and then you would just come and lift this up. Now, one, this is a little heavy. And 2, I actually have to look. I mean, is that wing gonna hit it, Kyle? Is that a thing?
No, so actually I was worried about that too, but right near where the dampers are, Voltex gives you like this little metal plate that you bolt in to actually stop the trunk lid from going any further to keep the wing from hitting the window.
Yeah, I mean, hey, that's smart engineering because, like, as I was lifting that up, like I said, it's a little bit heavy, obviously, with the wing on there. And I was like, God, don't go too far. So, hey, save the day there. So, next, let's talk about it. So, the inside cubic feet of space was only 6.9. So, not a huge trunk. that's pretty much evident the moment you open it up. There's really not a lot of space in the back of the Evo, but there's at least a few reasons why. So some of it's stuff you can see, some of it's stuff you can't. So first and foremost, the floor here is actually raised up pretty high, but part of that is because underneath there's a compact spare tire. So they at least gave you that. So, you know, again, that was much more common back when this car was on sale. The other thing is you look at the wall in the back, it's all like boarded up, so there's no 60/40 folding seats, there's no way to push them down, and in fact, behind some of this plastic cladding that they have here, apparently there's actual structural bracing to help with body rigidity, and that was one of the key elements for the Evo. So that's pretty cool that it's there, but you can't see it. But what you can see is here, there's actually a reservoir for your windshield wiper fluid. That's actually in the rear of the car. And the 12-volt battery is actually located in the trunk too. And that's not terribly uncommon. A lot of performance cars will put that in the rear to help with weight distribution, things like that. And then lastly over here, which is covered by the carpeted wall, was the AYC reservoir is actually hidden behind this right side fender well here. And that's for the active yaw control, which we'll talk about again once we get to the performance section. So next, let's go ahead and talk about the powertrain. All right, guys, next, let's go ahead and talk about the powertrain of this Mitsubishi Evo 10. Now, one of the things about the Evos, right, and dating back even to the generation of Evo that I used to have, is they were known for their engines and drivetrains, right? Now, the engine that I fell in love with and was in my Evo 4 was that, you know, legendary 4G63 engine, right? That's, I know what everybody remembers, but it wasn't until they got to this very last 10th generation Evo that they came up with an entirely new engine. And this one was called 4B11T. That was the engine code, right? And in its stock form, it actually made 291 horsepower and 300 pound-feet of torque for the US spec. And that's all from this 2-liter inline-4 turbocharged engine. Now, clearly, there's some modifications done here. Kyle, as I'm looking, why don't you tell us what's going on with both the intake and this charge pipe over here?
Yeah, so the biggest thing that's changed under the hood is I swapped out the factory charge pipe for a hard charge pipe. It was actually kind of like a woven material.
Okay.
That, from my understanding, under full boost would kind of expand and make sure the system stayed within its boost pressure that it was tuned for.
Okay.
And then the other thing is I changed out the intake, which used to be an intake box, and now it's a short ram system. Kind of cleans up the engine bay a little bit by opening it up, because the box was admittedly kind of big.
Yep.
But those are probably the biggest change points under the hood.
Okay, so a little bit of change points there. And obviously you got the full, you know, catback exhaust that you were talking about, things like that. So, I mean, did you ever get the car dyno? Did you figure out what the, you know, performance enhancements were? Or?
No, never got around to having it professionally dynoed. Just running that stage 1 map that we talked about on the Cobb access port.
Well, we won't speculate. I'm sure there's definitely an increase in performance, and we'll check that out here in a sec. Lastly, because we talked about your coilover and your suspension. So as I look up here, you know, this front strut tower bar, that was stock, right? But I can basically see where your, these are the knobs, right, to adjust the coilover suspension?
Yeah, so those are the knobs. You can, the front and rear have them. There's actually a kit that Tein makes where you could control it from inside the car. Obviously don't have that, so if I wanted to adjust suspension stiffness, I'd actually have to physically go under there and turn the knobs.
Tweak them out again. All right, well, hey, that's fantastic. Clearly there's a lot of performance upgrades here, but there's no better way to prove that out than to get behind the wheel. So next, let's go ahead and take this thing for a drive. All right, guys, here we are inside the Mitsubishi Evo 10 GSR. We're gonna go ahead and take this thing for a drive. So got the owner, got Kyle with me here in the passenger seat, so thanks for letting us drive your car.
Yeah, of course.
Got the kind of traditional key fob here, so no push button start. So I'll go ahead and put that in, clutch in, and turn. Sounds pretty good, pretty good. It is a hot day. We'll have the AC on a little bit, just so we don't melt. Other than that, Kyle, before I take this thing off, is there anything else I need to know here? Anything special?
Yeah, we'll just let this system boot up and then go ahead and hold that info button. It'll clear that.
All right.
There you go.
Got it.
Aside from that, we got the access port port booted up. So the one thing I like about the access port, aside from being able to reflash the engine whenever I want, it also is set up with a couple gauges. So like boost gauge, intake air temp, manifold air temp, and then I have like the knock count just to make sure nothing goes wrong.
Okay.
Especially when I'm driving a little more spirited. But,
a little bit more spirited.
so
okay.
instead of the triple pod gauges that a lot of Evo owners do with each individual gauge, I like that I can at least have something.
Yeah, you've got all your information right here, easy reach. So I'm gonna go ahead, pull down the handbrake, manual handbrake. I do have the 4-point seat belts on, and we're gonna go ahead and kind of back up here. So yeah, it's funny because like you said, Cal, it's like these mirrors on the side are actually like really small, but for all intents and purposes, like they're pretty good, like I can see. So we'll see how it goes as we go through the rest of the drive, but that already has me impressed given like how small they are from the outside. But you know, as we're pulling out here, the other thing we got to remember is, like you said, is that, you know, that front lip, man, it is low to the ground. So we're gonna go ahead and make sure I don't tear up your front lip. So just let traffic here, you know, clear here for a sec. But the other thing I'll say is right off the bat is the clutch, right? Like it's a little heavy. To like give some perspective to that, I'd say it is even a little bit heavier than like a Civic Type R, a modern Civic Type R, or even my own Integra Type S. So would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, having driven both those cars myself, I was always surprised at how heavy the stock clutch was on the Evo. Of course, driving it every day, got used to it, but when I do drive cars like Type Rs and Integra Type S's, it's noticeable.
Well, yeah, I mean, and already, again, I can tell this car's going to be a lot of fun to drive. You know, pedal placement's really good. Again, it's an Evo, right? Very high performance. But again, I think the other, you know, the mod that you made, you know, with the, you know, shift knob here is really critical, because I could see what you're talking about. Without it being like this high and this long, I think it would be a little bit of a reach to get down to it, right?
Yeah.
So, okay.
So the longer shift knob definitely helps.
Oh man, but hopefully you guys are, I'm sure you're picking that up on the camera here, but man, the sounds that this car makes, right? The wastegate is pretty intense. It's loud. Now, is that stock or is that something you modified?
Well, so you're hearing a lot of the intake noise, which is definitely louder because it's not the stock intake, but
Yeah,
the
it's
blow-off
that open
valve
box.
is the stock bypass valve that came with the car.
Okay. So yeah, definitely getting some major induction noises there. Like you said, it's the modified intake and having like that open box. You know, you're just hearing the engine sucking all the air there. Now, the other thing too is like, it's gonna take a little bit of getting used to for me, right? Because all these, like, you know, modern cars today have the, you know, smaller, you know, downsized turbos. They spool up quicker and they spool up at a much lower RPM. This is kind of very much like, you know, 90s, early 2000s. It's like you gotta wait till like 3,000-4,000 RPM and then it's like boom, right?
Yeah, it'll definitely give you that punch. Once you hit 3, yeah, it'll go.
It'll go. All right, well, we're gonna turn out here and we'll get into it a little bit and see how it does. But hopefully you guys will be able to hear us talking over not only the induction noises but the exhaust noise, which I'm sure will definitely will kick in here once we set off. So how many miles does this car have?
A little over 71.
Okay, 71,000. That's pretty good, right? I mean, and so this car is, you know, what, 12 years old, just about?
Yeah, it'll be 12 years old next February.
Yeah, you guys hear that induction noise? Oh man, the wastegate, the induction noise on this thing is intense. It definitely sounds good. You know, when you decided to get all the modifications done, was your goal to like get it to the level it's at, or you still have wants to like go beyond this level of performance? Where's your mindset with all the mods?
I think I'm happy with where the car is right now currently. Like, I'd probably do a couple small things. Like, I don't have a downpipe. It's still a stock downpipe. Dream wheels, of course, a lot of us like TE37, so
Yep.
One day I'd like to swap out the wheels for some TE37 Super Laps with that graphite gray, the red decal stickers. But aside from that, unless I win the lottery one day and can afford to do like a full wide body conversion on it, maybe do something like that. But no, I'm happy with the car the way it is. It drives great.
It does. I mean, I'm kind of like stuck in traffic here, and we're just going straight right now. I haven't got to any like twisty bits, but I mean, for the most part, the ride quality is really good, right? That was one of the things I'm always worried about, right? When a car has like coilovers or aftermarket suspension, you know, or very aggressive and it's really low to the ground, you kind of wonder if it's gonna just be, you know, almost a little too harsh. But your car doesn't feel like that at all. It's actually really well tuned, and so I don't know what number you've twisted it to get to this level, but it feels like it's a really good balance between like street and probably some level of aggressive driving.
Yeah, it's definitely on the stiffer side. I think where you see the difference between my car and maybe some of the other cars on our channel is like you can't switch it from one drive mode to the other, and the suspension will adapt and get softer. So that's probably the one, I'd say, downside to having coilover suspension, is that I'd have to physically go under the hood or go in the back and twist the knobs to adjust it to something softer.
Okay.
But no, the setup's good for daily driving. I've done it for a number of years, so.
Well, I'm just waiting for traffic to open up here, but I mean, you guys could probably already hear this thing. I'm sitting a little over 4,000 RPM, and yeah, the sounds this thing makes are, it just gets crazier and crazier, so I'm gonna get up into it. Yeah, this thing is like a go-kart for the streets, and yeah, the performance is amazing, and the sound, right, I mean, everybody is quickly moving out of the way because they definitely hear, you know, and it's great because it's great for heel and toe driving, and I mean, yeah, when you get into it, it just has this pull, which is so reminiscent of, like, again, like that 90s style and late 2000s or early 2000s style, where it was like, you know, really aggressive, you know, kind of turbo boost and build up, and once it hits you, man, it's like a freaking jackhammer. It just takes off. It's so much fun to drive, man. Really cool. And honestly, again, you know, outside, I mean, we've got the windows rolled up, but I mean, I just can imagine how loud that wastegate and that induction noise is for everybody else outside, right? It's amazing.
Yeah, over the years, it's like I've met up at friends' houses and they're like, oh, we can hear you from like 3 blocks away. So it's like, no need to ring the doorbell, no need to text, I'm here. It's like, you just roll up.
Well, and like you said, I mean, that's one of the things. I mean, a lot of these modern cars have, like, you know, the ability to like really drive through, you know, several different drive modes and, you know, adjust the sound and everything else. But there's something to be said about this where it's like, no, this is just what the car is. It's like, you know, very loud, and you get what you get. Like, there's no surprise here. And quite frankly, again, it's kind of refreshing. I mean, and it just shows, you know, the real, you know, performance capabilities of this car. I mean, it just, I mean, man, I can't even say how fast we're going here, but it definitely sounds the part. So I'm gonna drive for a little bit more just to get up to a little bit more open road. But you know, one of the other things though is, you know, this car and again the WRX, the STI, they were kind of like, you know, arch nemesis, right? Like super rivals. So for you, what made you decide to go the Evo route versus something like, you know, the STI, for example?
I think it was always just the Evo was the more performance, like track focused car between the two. Like everyone always said, you wanted the Evo to have at the track and the STI to drive home from the track because it was more comfortable. I always was told or read where you can't daily drive an Evo. I've done it. I did it on stock suspension, did it on modified suspension, and it was never an issue. But yeah, I just like the Evo sound over the STI, even though a lot of people like the boxer rumble and everything. Boxer, but yeah, especially with like the 8s and the 9s, the 4G63s always seem to rev a little higher. And the 4B11T has its own distinct note that I love too. So,
well, I mean, honestly, as someone that went out of my way to buy an Evo when I lived in Japan, I totally understand and I agree. But you know, let us know your guys' thoughts and comments down below. I'm sure there's going to be some Subaru fans on here, some STI fans that clearly disagree with us. But you know, let us know what you guys think down below. Also, let us know if you guys want to see other Evos, other modded cars on this channel. We're happy to bring it to you. And again, honestly, I'm just having too much fun. I'm gonna find one more spot here to. Oh, there was a nice little pop there, right?
Yeah.
Is that a thing?
Yep, it will pop.
All right, we're gonna give one last blast before we wrap this up. You guys ready? Here we go. Oh man, this thing is too much fun, and it sounds freaking amazing. So, hey guys, we hope you enjoyed cars, so we can definitely bring it back at some point. But with that, we're gonna go ahead and wrap up this drive video. All right, guys, that's a wrap. What did you think of the 2013 Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution 10? Is it truly still a hot performance sedan in today's marketplace? Let us know your guys' thoughts and comments down below. Are you going Subaru WRX STI? Are you going Mitsubishi Evo? No matter which generation, let us know. Also, if you want to see more modded and tuned out cars like this on the channel, we're happy to bring it to you. So if you've joined us before, thank you so much. But if you're new to the channel, please be sure to click that bell to subscribe to come back for more. Thanks, and we'll see you at the next episode.